Hello, everyone. So welcome to our webinar about Meet the Editor webinar, which organized by the OSCM Division MENA Region Ambassador team. So I'm Rima Hasan. I am the member of the MENA Region Ambassador team with the OSCM Division at the Academy of Management. Together with our team consists of Dr. Sharwat Ibrahim, Muhammad Mushtari, Muhammad Ghababshe, and myself. So we are very pleased to welcome you to our first webinar, which is focusing on the Meet the Editor webinar. So the main objective of our webinar today is to get an introduction about the top journals and leading journals in the area of operations and supply chain management. It's targeting scholars from the MENA region, so the Middle East and North Africa. So we are looking for getting more in-depth information about the scope and the aim of the journals and opportunities about important topics and sharing some ideas and having some discussions with the editors of these leading journals. So today it's a great pleasure to welcome top editors from the IJOPM, which is the International Journal of Operations Management, the Journal of Operations Management, the Journal of Purchasing and Supply Chain Management, and the Journal of Supply Chain Management. So our agenda for today, we will have presentations from each editor, and then we will open up for questions and answers from the audience, and then we have closing remarks and some ideas about what's our upcoming webinar. So just an introduction to our team. So Sharwat Ibrahim, she's also with us today. Sharwat, she's Associate Professor of Operations Management at the School of Business at the American University of Cairo in Egypt. She's also the editor-in-chief, she's the regional and Africa region editor with the Journal of Supply Chain Management, and she will be with us as a panelist for our session today. Also, the team consists of Muhammad Al-Ghababshe. So Dr. Muhammad Al-Ghababshe, he's Assistant Professor of Operations and Supply Chain Management at Mu'ta University in Jordan. And also Dr. Muhammad Mushtari, he's Associate Professor of Supply Chain Management and the Supply Chain Management and Academy of Finland, Research Fellow at Temple University in Finland. And myself, Rima Hasan, I'm Assistant Professor of Operations Management and Innovation at the University of Jordan in Amman. So today we featured 4 editors who will be with us today. We have Professor Constantin Blome, Editor-in-Chief with the International Journal of Operations and Production Management, IJOPM. And we have Professor Fabrizio Salvador. He is the Department Editor of the Intervention-Based Research at the Journal of Operations Management. And the Professor Stephen Carnovale, he is the co-editor-in-chief with the Journal of Purchasing and Supply Management. And finally, we have the Associate Professor Sharwat Ibrahim. She is the regional editor for Africa with the Journal of Supply Chain Management. Welcome, our esteemed editor. It's really great pleasure to have you with us today. And now we will have the floor for the editor presentations. So we will start first with Constantin to talk about more about the IJOPM, the International Journal of Production and Operations and Production Management. And then we will continue with our esteemed editor with the other journals. So thank you very much for being with us. And I will stop sharing so we can also have presentations from the editors. So thank you very much, our esteemed editor. It's really great pleasure to have you with us today. And we are looking forward for learning more about the leading journals in the area of operations and supply chain management. So thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for the invitation. Rima, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, of course, I brought a couple of slides, but I also will not go through all of them, and I put a timer for myself so that I don't steal too much time of everybody else, because most of us can talk probably for ages about publishing. And so I just put my 50 minutes, sorry. And I think I would like to share a couple of lessons overall that I learned along the way of becoming editor, from an author and reviewer to AE to DE, just what kind of made me think at a couple of stages along the career, but of course to share a bit about the journal. I think most important is also you saw all the acronyms on different names. So sorry, Rima, for all the abbreviations to go through. I think to a certain extent, everybody of you who's now eager in doing research and publishing, I think you're actually at a pretty good time. If I remember 15 years back and you try to talk to the editors and the journals, I must say it was not very accessible. So you often felt like, oh, it's somewhere behind closed curtains, somewhere in the US at the big schools, and you didn't have any chance to be part of it unless you spend significant amount of time in the US and talk to the right people. I think with technology, but also with more journalists being present, and also with more interest in research across the globe, and also with increasing rigor in terms of methods and theories and everything else across the globe, journals get far more accessible. And you see that the other journals and our journal are also here. I think the pie is getting a little bit bigger, but the competition is, of course, also getting more significant because more people do research. Still, I think no matter where you are, you have a chance to get access to those journals, and journals are more and more eager to produce data also from regions that are underrepresented. So in IJOPM, we try to particularly encourage submissions from regions that are underrepresented, and I come back to that, some stats there. Now, what is IJOPM? IJOPM is a relatively broad church. So everything that is related to operations and supply chain in any way is of interest to us. It's an empirical journal. Of course, you can mix in also modeling work and everything else, but the punchline of the manuscript that you submit must be empirical. So that is where we try to focus on. The other journals that we see today are also to a certain extent in a similar way. Where we also differ a little bit is that we would accept a compromise on the rigor of the submission, but it has to be contributionally leading. So if it's 90% of rigor, we are fine, but it has to be 100% of contribution. Can be manufacturing, can be services, can be private, can be public. That doesn't matter. It can be even performance measurement, risk management, supply chain, all you can name, as long as it's related to operations. The IJOPM board is relatively big, and that is also a mirror of how we changed the journal. When we picked up, there was mainly one EIC and two AEs. We changed the gravitas of the journal more towards the AEs. So the AEs are the decision makers that stay with you through the process. We also changed the publication process significantly, that also then some of the journals that are around today also do in a similar way nowadays. So if you submit, it's mainly first an editorial assistant who will look at it, the manuscript, who's also Professor Martin Schlepper, then it lands on the editor-in-chief's desk. So that's at the moment either myself or Tobias Schönherr or Rob Klassen. Manuscript will be sent out for review. We wait until 2 reviews are back, and then an AE will be associated. That AE will be asked to stay with you in the submission until the end. If you resubmit manuscripts, they will never go back to original reviewers. They will only stay with the AE, so that you have a very consistent experience. And you will also see there are not too many layers in the review process, where we believe that this is important. If you have like DE, AE, and multiple reviewers, I think it gets prohibitively difficult to publish at some journals without necessarily making them, the review experience better. So we say, okay, 1 AE, 2 reviewers, and the AE will stay with you until the end. The reviewers provide only their time at the beginning, their input at the beginning, and that's it. The journal takes care of all the administrative chasing, that the reviews are there on time, so that the AE can work closely with you and provide constructive feedback, and we clearly tell the AE, We won't have more than 3-4 manuscripts a year. But if you ask you to work on a manuscript, you stay with the manuscript, and you have to be constructive, and you have to be, in the end, of course, also okay that the paper is published. So that changed quite a bit the dynamics. Of course, we onboarded far more younger folks as well. So people get promoted from editorial review board to associate editor if they're successful, if they're constructive. And I think that's what, over the last 5 years, we really try to change, and which really also changed is the constructive level, constructiveness level of feedback. And I think that is, if you have something of interest, definitely come to IJOPM and try to submit. However, so we talk about roughly now, we have received in the end last year more than 1,000 submissions. Acceptance rate is more like 8 to 10% depending. So we definitely publish 75 papers a year, but in some years we also publish 100. Desk reject rate is, which sound for authors always awfully high. So we talk about 75%. I can say it's already low, better than in the past. So in the past, we had probably 85% of reject rates, which is also similar to other journals that we'll present later today. This is more in the interest of the authors, because after having dealt with 5,000 to 6,000 papers over the last years, you kind of have an indication of which manuscripts will make it through. Sometimes we tell the people we desk reject and give you a chance to resubmit, but very often there's quite some strong decision-making in place to see whether the manuscript will make it or not. Just have it in mind as an author, I think that was something that I did not know as an author at the beginning, that the desk reject is so high. Typically, it takes 5 minutes. It sounds harsh. If you work 3-4 years on your PhD thesis, then you submit, and potentially already the next day, you might get a desk reject from the journal that you had just submitted to. And then people write back and say, oh, are you sure that you had a look at our manuscript? Perhaps it was an accident that you decided. And unfortunately, that is very seldom the case. Occasionally it happens. But in some journals, this same process might take like 3-4 weeks. But in the end, you have to convince the reader in 5 minutes that your manuscript is a solid and worthy one to be forwarded. And that's, I would say, kind of a bit of a reality. Impact factor is pretty all right. There are other journals here that have higher ones, some of them slightly lower. I think in our area, and all the journals that we see today here are leading in that respect. For us, it's important that the empirical piece that we publish attracts good readership and people cite it. But we would not massage with literature reviews, invited pieces, bibliography. You find some journals that are very good in massaging the impact factor. For us, it's important to be in an evoked set of good journals so that you get credit. But this is more like a sanity check. It's not, it's not the maximization that should happen. The original contribution of the manuscript should stand out. That is what is driving us. This is just giving you, last year in the end, we published 100 papers. I did not update this figure. And this year we will be probably 100 papers as well. Some journals are a bit bigger, some a bit smaller. So it's important for you to make, in a smaller journal, probably more difficult to get involved, as people are already tied up with the journal, then there might be less free open slots. So we try to create a lot of open ground for people to come in. And the other one, that's where I always tease my co-editors from the other journals, where we are very proud on, is the throughput time from original submission to final accept. So we are now in 200 days. The journal is ABS4 rated, and there are not too many ABS4 rated journals that achieve throughput time of approximately 200 days, including your revision. So we try to be current. I think also in the end of the process, very often then we try not to send out a third or fourth time if we can foresee that these are minor things that can be dealt with in a conditional accept to speed up the process. It also means that we sometimes overrule AEs in their decision-making. I think this is also very important for an active journal. And I definitely wanted to share this. I know it's very small. It's only the rough data. And we took the liberty to look at the published papers in JSCM, JOM, IJOPM, and POM. I'm sorry for Stephen for not having JPSM here. So I cannot speak for that one. And also JBL should probably be included as well, but we did the data for this one. And we looked at Two things. Where does the empirical data come from which countries? And we looked here at developing regions. And the second one, but I have not shared this table here, is also we looked at the affiliation of the authors. Do they really come from local markets or not? Because you also could think about, let's say, American scholars in the US working on Chinese data that then will be exploited in some way and published, but it's not actually the Chinese locally publishing. You see here, it's not too much, unfortunately, from the region you're from at the moment. So in total, we anyhow see, I teased already the JCM editors on another panel with it. JCM limited output 30 in JOM, IJOPM 175, and POM 65. The interesting thing is also that was not on purpose. So we just retrospectively looked, do we have emerging market data there or not? You see, I'm just checking. We're definitely also not good on the MENA region. Let me go through the list. I would say not much at all. So we see UAE down here. We see Syrian data. I would say it's probably less than a handful. So there's a lot of opportunity there. We're just working on a new guidance document for empirical research from emerging markets. Because what is clear, if we just use the American standards that are mainly considering perhaps an environment where you have abundant data, where you might have more rigorous institutions available to deliver data, and you ask local folks to follow the same rules, in the end, people will never publish. Because, for example, I was at an African conference at Cariska in Ghana last year, which is also repeating, I think, in 2 weeks' time. And everybody was doing survey research. Now, you might have heard that some journals in the US, in the operations management field at least, dislike survey data. But if a whole continent is only publishing survey data and you don't allow it, then naturally you won't have much submission from there. So I think we have to come to a point to encourage more submission from the region, but it's not enough to encourage. You also have to make sure that reviewers respect empirical standards in a different way, because institutions are different, resources are different. I, for example, did not know that collecting survey data in Ghana is far more expensive than in Western markets, because you just can otherwise not get the data. So I think that has to be respected. Okay, that's then there were a couple of special issues just to give a flavor: managing emergent uncertainties through adaptable supply chain planning, advancing the social political view of supply chain management that has closed already. And the last one on sustainable operations, supply chain management. What about diversity, equity, and inclusion? So you see where things are heading. Also, I would like to mention our last initiative, which is pretty powerful, the impact pathways, which are short 3,000-word articles, which are not there to answer a research question, but they are there to find out new research questions that are possibly interesting for our field. By talking to business leaders and or policymakers, you can co-author. There's also an overview document available now on the IJOPM impact pathways that have appeared. What we definitely can tell from the most downloaded and cited papers, impact pathways really make a difference. Consultant companies come up, practitioners come back. We have stuff on resilient post-COVID-19 supply chain sustainability, coronavirus, tariffs, trade wars, and supply chain evolutionary design, and so on and so forth. So we try to push this a little bit more. Just checking, I have 1 minute left. In this last 1 minute, I can always share what we share at this occasion. Be bold or italic, never regular, which should mainly mean, as editor, I think that was the biggest learning along the way of the publishing process. People just do too much of the same stuff. Try to exploit your local context, because if you sit in Jordan, why would you work only on US data and publish on US data, whereas you could exploit local phenomena and local things that are not present in the US, that might pose significant challenges because of the geopolitical situation tied in between different worlds, for example. The region has many things that to look at. I also went in Africa last year in Ghana. Something like the unorganized sector, which does not exist in Western markets. I don't see much literature on that in supply chain journals. And there are many things you can exploit. I can tell you that editors do love, and AEs and reviewers the same, do like to read new stuff. Whenever it looks like old or similar to other stuff, people will be harsh in their reviews. Whenever you find phenomena that are new, that nobody has heard of, that are perhaps exciting for your context, then definitely submit, and people will treat you very openly and fairly. That's it from my side. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much, Constantin. Thank you very much. We will keep the questions for the end after we hear from all editors, so we can have multiple questions at once. Thank you so much. And now we have the presentation of Journal of Operations Management from Professor Fabrizio Salvador.
Can you hear me well?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, so it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I am here making, let's say, substituting the editor-in-chief because both Elio Bendoli and Rogelio Oliva couldn't make it due to previous appointments. But let's say I had enough history of the journal. My first paper was accepted by the founder, Jack Meredith, many years ago. And I've been founding department editor when JOM moved from the old traditional structure to the departmental structure. And then I recently joined again with the intervention-based research hub. So following on the footstep of Constantin, I will use some slides to support my presentation. I confirm we have 15 minutes, right? Actually 14 now, Rima, correct?
Yeah.
And so let me get to the presentation. And share. Okay, here we go. Okay, can you see?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, very good. So JOM, well, as you know, is well, like IJOPM, actually one of the oldest operation journal in the field since the 1980s. Few basic thing about the journal. So is we know, well, we have 11 impact factor, 2-year impact factor 7.8. We are on the Financial Times top list, UT Dallas, Association Business School, the equivalent of the Australian Business Dean Council list. And what is one fundamental characteristics of the Journal of Operations Management is that it's an empirical journal about operations. So empirical doesn't mean that we publish only quantitative study, could be qualitative research, could be ethnography, which actually would put it within the realm of qualitative research, but that is the fundamental thing. So this doesn't mean that we are closed to other methodologies. So to the extent that a paper compellingly compares and puts together quantitative empirical research with simulation, with optimization, with any other methodology, let's say system dynamics or other methodology that may work, that is welcome, even though it's more complicated to have multiple method papers. But that's definitely one fundamental thing. Exceptionally, we may have a literature reviews piece from people that are very well known on the field for a certain type of contribution, and they have a sort of AMR type, let's say, a repositioning of research and synthesis of what has been done and need to be done. We can also have method paper, but I mean, the bulk of what JOM publishes empirical research. So, well, I will comment later on the departmental structure. And I would, first of all, start with some important information here. First of all, speed, right? So I was forgetting. So speed, you know, there is a little bit of, in my view, a little bit of obsession in the field with the speed. because I mean, what we care when we submit a paper is speed and quality, and but we strive to do both. So you see that we have a submission to acceptance of almost 400 days, and this is actually due to the requirements of our reviewers. But we try to be fast with the first decision. We are talking about 21 days. And as in the previous case, desk rejects are, I don't know, I don't have the exact figure now, but definitely is a high number in terms of percentage of submissions and is rising. The reason is that on top of papers that don't meet qualitative requirements of a first submission, we also got in the past a number of papers that were actually good papers, but were not really operations. And so like people in, I don't know, leadership, who has a paper on transformational leadership in a manufacturing plant or in a bank back office operations. Well, to the extent that the leadership idea doesn't link to operational dynamics, we would not consider it an operation paper. And that is to say, the journal is very open, but this focus on operation, this, let's say, keeping north, there is a recent editorial from the editor-in-chief that I recommend you take a look at, is definitely there, all right? So we are really striving to have a fast turnaround. And I mean, of course, you have to strike a balance between the need to have quality and time. So as I was saying, one of the new innovations that we made to make sure that your paper goes smoothly into the revision process is that you have to provide a special statement when you submit a paper to JOM. This was implemented a few weeks ago, where you actually say why it is an operation piece, where is the empirical part of the piece, and what is the operational contribution, right? And by operational contribution, actually, we refer to two things. Contribution must be relevant, that is, should link to a practical problem that is of interest of people related to management of operations, supply chains, service operations, and these kind of things. But it must also be theoretical. And theoretical doesn't mean that you have to reference the resource-based view or some great theory from management or general management. Is that if you think about why your paper contributes to knowledge in the field beyond solving an empirical or practical problem. This is actually sometimes difficult for people to achieve, but that is fundamental. And building on what Constantin was saying, we are super open to submissions that come from abroad. I guess that probably some developing countries struggle to get higher representation empirical in operation management due to methodological requirements of our reviewers. But as things have been, a department editor is hard to tell your reviewers that you have to lower the standard because this paper, this or that, right? So we try to give a very developmental option to those papers, but still, rigor is fundamental for the journal, right? Always you have this balance. You can have a little less of rigor because it's super relevant and new. And sometimes it's not so relevant and new, but super rigorous. But I mean, you have to keep an eye on both the side of the story. And you know that JOM with 2 editors ago, when was at the time of Mikko Ketokivi and well, I'm missing the other name now. Sorry, so long time ago, we moved to a departmental structure. And of course, we are cognizant that the departmental structure has multiple layers because of the editor-in-chief, the department editor, the associate editor, the reviewers. But what really happens is that basically the acceptance decision is delegated to department editors. So the decision to go for this structure was to have a less top-heavy structure And since we have a lot of submission, you try to divide the load between more specialized department editors. So what does the department editor do in the triangle between the reviewers, the associate editor, and the department editor? Of course, he selects the team and he makes judgment calls, right? Since each department editor doesn't have to oversee dozens of papers at the same time, we can take the luxury of looking deeper in the papers. And when we have, let's say, contrasting opinion within the team, the department editor can take a position. And that's, I think, is a fundamental advantage of the structure, because we can really sometimes identify raw diamonds and polish them, navigating again the wind. Because it's true that reviewers sometimes tend to overweight rigor over relevance, but there are situations where you see that actually it's a matter of fixing some part of the analysis, repositioning the theory, but measurement and data are basically okay. If measurement and data have problems, then it's unaddressed, simply. So you all know the structure of the departments. We try not to have too many departments because that could be confusing for reviewers. And you know, healthcare comments itself. You may say, what's the difference between innovation and project management and technology management? Well, innovation and project management is really about how you manage or organize the innovation processes in a way or the other, while technology management is broader. It may be interested in digitalization, technology acceptance, but also in the realm of making operation and process innovation happen. Then operational systems is the dual of inter-organizational operations. So inter-organizational is everything that links to supply chain, supply networks, other kind of thing, while the operational systems has more quote-unquote internal logic. And then you have the interfaces when you touch on different things, public policy, pretty obvious, sustainable operation also at 360 degrees. And for intervention-based research, I think we are proud of having a department on that, because when you do empirical research in a field, you have 3 ways to do it, or 4. You can do survey, you can do secondary data, you can do field experiment, but sometimes you don't have a control group. And that's the domain of intervention-based research. And we are actually hoping to get good, more good submission, and we are going to be as developmental as it is possible. Sometimes people say that we don't accept survey data. We don't accept survey data when there is clearly a better way to measure things. So if you measure, for example, performance with survey, perceptual measure of performance, we are not particularly enthusiastic, but always you have to see case by case. And I think that the idea was that we don't publish survey research came when Nico and Dan actually for a while really didn't accept it, but that was to make a point that people had to retool to learn also other methodologies. Now I think it's not impossible, but you have to have a reason. While you should have a reason to use ethnography, or you should have a reason to use qualitative. Important thing, qualitative, we are very open. Problem with qualitative is that you get a lot of bad submission. And I know what I'm talking about because I get a lot of those, especially in the past, I was getting a lot of them. Finally, what we have here, a few prepping lists when you submit to JOM. Know the journal, so sometimes people, you get papers and they don't reference much JOM. We're not looking for citation of ourselves, but when you really see that there is a conversation in the journal of a topic and you have a paper that doesn't cite the conversation, you wonder a little bit whether they realize that publishing is really about talking to your colleagues. And very important, as I said, rigor matters, and so know your method. We are pretty agnostic to the kind of empirical method that you use, but whatever you choose to use, know it well and make sure that is relatively robust. Our recommendation, actually I copy verbatim from ASQ, don't submit to JOM if you didn't previously socialize the paper enough, getting different feedback, different views so that you already know where typically reviewers may hit harder and get ready for that. And also study whether the department, sometimes you have trade-off. If you're not sure about the department which submit, feel free to contact either department editor or the editor-in-chief. And of course, all the manuscript guidelines and really our best recommendation. If you have 2 or 3 papers that you are planning to submit your best work to JOM and we'll treat it fairly. One thing compared to other Financial Times top journals, and I'm proud about that, we are open. We don't look from which school you submit. We look at what you submit. And I think this is definitely a plus of JOM. It's kind of democratic in that sense. And at least when you look at the FT crowd, so other journals, of course, are super democratic. Okay, with this, I think I am done with my introduction. And I don't know, I think, Rima, I think I'm on time, right?
Yeah, perfect timing.
Stop the sharing. Okay, here I go.
Yeah, thank you very much, Fabrizio. And we will have the questions also at the end for Jean as well. Thank you so much. And now we will have the presentation from Stephen, the co-editor-in-chief for the Journal of Purchasing and Supply Management. So Stephen,
Okay.
please.
Excellent, thank you. Let me make sure everybody can see the full screen. Okay, I'm assuming it's visible.
Yeah, it is.
Excellent. Okay. So thank you for having me. This is one of the things that we've been doing at JPSM is reaching out to markets where there are a ton of scholars that work in topics that we publish, but for all the reasons presented, plus perhaps some more, haven't had a lot of success getting through and getting papers published. So I'm really grateful to be able to be here and to talk to everybody. So as was said, I'm Stephen Carnovale along with Carmel Di Mauro. We are the editors-in-chief of JPSM. Those are our stats down there. Everybody's throwing statistics at you, but what I want you to know about our journal is really what we do. We're a specialized journal focused on purchasing and supply management. So what that means for us is basically anything focusing on how firms deal with, manage, coordinate, acquire, or basically handle the external resources of the firm. So when we say external resources, what we're talking about are contracts with suppliers, procurement of materials, navigating supply bases, managing risk in sources of supply, supply continuity. So all of these things related to the external resources. And in my next slide, I'm going to show you some boundary conditions around the knowledge that we focus on, because there's certain things that, you know, every editor here is going to desk reject things. It could be from a quality standpoint, it could be from a rigor standpoint, but most of the desk rejections, I think Constantin said it, is out of scope. So if we, for example, get topics related to mathematical modeling or game theoretic optimization of some type of multi-tiered inventory system, interesting though it may be, it's not within our scope. We are an empirical journal. There are very few cases whereby a mathematical modeling component of a larger paper would be pushed forward. It would have to be a multi-method study. So an example could be if a game theoretic problem was set up, examining, let's say, bargaining between buyers and suppliers or navigating some type of risk, something like this. And that one optimization model was presented initially, and then an empirical test fleshing out those results was also included. Perhaps it's few and far between. We are primarily empirical. When we say empirical, we're typically focusing on things related to econometric and statistical analysis of secondary data. Every now and then survey data could get through, but we are very careful to scrutinize on single respondent data, much like my colleague at JSCM, I'm sure will mention, simply because what we're focusing on are interdepartmental or interorganizational concepts. So focusing on one respondent from one section of one company is a challenging thing to be able to extrapolate to multiple different interconnected entities. So just to sum up the key important points there, anything related to managing those external resources, primarily empirical. Related to that empiricism, it's also, of course, case studies and other qualitative research. They have to be done quite rigorously. I think what we've done moving forward is we've spent a lot of time focused on the rigor of the methodologies utilized, so as to avoid any retractions or ethical issues. And we've also implemented a data declaration that's required for everybody who utilizes data in the study. They have to say whether or not the data have been used previously, and if so, what's the extent of the overlap, in addition to where those data can be found. So basically, transparency is our motto. So what are some boundary conditions that we'll focus on? Given that we are not a logistics journal or an operations journal or an operations research journal, that doesn't mean topics that touch on these wouldn't be included. So if you are a logistics scholar that's focusing on elements related to 3PL contracting, buyer-supply relationships within 3PLs, negotiating or managing some type of risk that may exist within the sourcing process related to acquiring those services, that could absolutely be something that we'd study, provided that the novelty of what you're saying is there, provided that what we see is a theoretical contribution to the field. What we wouldn't see, of course, is if you do something doing optimizing warehousing locations. That's not us. And one of my colleagues here might accept something like that given the scope of their journals. For us, that wouldn't be necessarily something that we would focus on. Related to operations management, if it's connecting different companies along the kind of the inbound portion of the supply chain, which is where we focus, if there's some type of coordination that's being studied, or some type of process that spans multiple entities, that is something that we could consider. But if it's internal operations or service operations, these are things that are much better suited towards Fabrizio's journal. So this wouldn't be something that we would focus on. And then, of course, other tangentially related topics, organizational studies or marketing. From the marketing side of things, we get a lot of submissions. For whatever reason, people see purchasing and they think, oh, it must be about buying stuff. And it is. It's just not about how consumers buy stuff. So we have to focus on the B2B side of things. That's the marketing scope that we focus on. And that's kind of, those are sort of our boundary conditions at JPSM. Couple things to note. One special issue that's closing up very soon is the digitalization for sustainable purchasing. We've got a ton of submissions and interest for the journal. So if anybody has something that they're looking for a home for that relates to anything that I said, with the focus on digitalization, sustainability, Joe Sarkis and colleagues are heading up that one. The submission deadline is going to be in about 5 days. So polish that up and send it over to us. We'd be happy to consider it. We get a ton of literature reviews, and most of them, I would say 99.9% of them, are immediately desk rejected, because mostly literature review papers need to tell us something that hasn't been said. But as a result of the demand, we've launched a special issue with Stefan Suring and colleagues who are going to be leading this. This submission should be open relatively soon. So if you have literature reviews that deal with the future of purchasing, or the future of the discipline that elucidate new knowledge, this is something that we'd love to see. And we're soon going to be publishing the special issue that we had on pedagogy in purchasing. So if anybody studies pedagogy, be on the lookout for that. We've also got a track that we focus on called Notes and Debate, similar to my colleague Constantin's Impact Pathways. These are basically topics where you want to advance an idea that's relatively novel and you'd like to generate discussion on the topic, but it's not to a point where a full-fledged manuscript is sufficient, or at least available, or perhaps data aren't quite available. And so we've had a great turnout for this, with a number of different colleagues from our editorial boards, as well as the community. Actually, Constantin's colleague recently published one with us about creating resilient supply chains. Tom Choi had an excellent one about leaping from triads to tetrads. We've got a lot of work on supply chain finance, so I encourage you to check those out. These are usually shorter pieces that lead to relatively interesting discussion. Some quick stats, and if I'm going over, please just tell me to shut up. I'll keep talking if you let me. So tell me to stop. One of the things that we've been focusing on, we get about between 400 and 500 submissions per year. Our desk rejection rate tends to be quite high, mostly because of the out of scope or lack of rigor. But one of the things that we've been focusing on pretty greatly is reducing processing time, because it's critical, especially if you're an early career scholar. You need information soon on your manuscript, whether or not it's going to be decided. So the initial desk rejection, we've been working as aggressively as possible to trim that down, in addition to kind of leaning out the process by my associate editors probably want to slap me in the face by now, because I constantly poke them and tell them, hey, check this manuscript. Hey, have you heard from the reviewers? I'm constantly poking and prodding just to make sure, because I think it's only fair to have this communicated as effectively and quickly as possible. When I send stuff into journals, I want to know soon too. So that's the idea. Our impact factor, we expect it to go up this year. It's always a wild card, but the back of the sheet math that we did, it should go up. We took a little bit of a dip because we had a stellar 2021, but we're proud of the quality of the work that we're putting out there. And so finally, the last thing I think that I would say that's critical is, so if you sum up, what am I looking for? We're looking for 3 different things, and we can make concessions on some, as Constantin mentioned. For me, the thing I focus on the most is the rigor of the method, because that's the thing that can make or break a study. So, for example, as it relates to survey data, which generally is on the decline, at least from submissions that we're seeing, and certainly the ones that end up going through. If it's single respondent, it's a challenge to move forward. There's an excellent editorial in the Journal of Supply Chain Management by Pagel and colleagues that describe the conditions under which a single respondent survey is appropriate and under which they're not. And we look at that as our kind of guidance. But if the method was handled appropriately with respect to the econometric specification, the assumptions testing, one thing that we're seeing a lot of are a lot of PLS-based models. And a lot of these models tend to get rejected because it's like a model for everything. You know, you've got 100 sample size and you're trying to test 58 different hypotheses, and that can be really challenging with bootstrapping and all this kind of stuff. So these are the things we're looking at, because you could have a great idea, it could be an original idea, but if it isn't executed correctly, we can't buy into the findings. And so we're constantly looking at rigor, whether the idea is original, and the significance of the impact of the study as it relates to the discipline in which we focus. And so with that, you know, I have some methodological trends that I can talk about, but I don't want to take up too much more time. We have a couple of editorials out, one recently published on a survey that we did from our panel, just a rough cut from our editorial board, kind of pulsing, saying, hey, what's the future going to look like? So we encourage you to look at that, and a couple other issues listed there. But I look forward to speaking with everybody later on. And now I believe I will pass over the torch to my colleague from JSCM. Thank you all for letting me talk for a bit.
Thank you very
much. Thank you very much, Stephen. Thank you. And now I would like to invite Sherwat Ibrahim. She's the regional editor for Africa with the Journal of Supply Chain Management. So Sherwat, you have the floor.
All right. Let me share the screen. Thank you, and thank you for the collegiality, Steve. You're right, we do work a lot together. Let me share my screen. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. All right, so I'm here on behalf of JSCM, in addition to being part of the organizing committee and the ambassadors of OSCM in this meeting here. I'm located in Cairo, the American University in Cairo School of Business, and I also am formerly the chapter chair for Africa's Responsible Management Education and the Academy of Management, which is also part of the Academy of Management Association here we're presenting. I'm here on behalf of our, co-editors-in-chief team, Wendy Tate, Andreas Wieland, and Ting Yang, very active, very excited to promote the journal globally. it wasn't always the case. So back in 2008, the Journal of Supply Chain Management was a North American journal, and the editorial team then consciously decided to move to Europe with a open-minded strategy of how to really promote the journal there. And strategically, as we try to navigate, they've been going around having this structure of what we call regional editor, where Ellie Pava, again, is in Latin America, my colleagues from East Asia and South Asia and Asia and Pacific, and my colleagues here for the Africa region, Samuel Fosuwamba, myself, and Ade Oidijo. So I'm here to, I guess, positioned in this area, in this part of the world, represent the journal. I mean, try to do a similar round of what my colleagues just did, and speak on behalf of JSCM with some maybe African focus, because this is the region JSCM is focusing on for the time being. JSCM again is ranked as a 4 in the ABS list. And we are, if you look at the supply chain management journal list, again, there's 4 journals that are specifically empirical for supply chain management, and we're one of those 4. These are the kind of qualitative rankings that we try to weigh on. Our impact factor is 10.6 again in 2022. That makes us the #1 supply chain management journal in that category, and 14th in management. And our site score is 12.1 again in 2022, the highest among a group of 208 journals. We're ranked #1. This actually slide here shows the 2-year citations for the papers that gives us these numbers. And I was just in a developmental workshop a couple of days back, and one of the interesting takeaways I took is that how do you publish in these journals? How do you get engaged? Is like, try to join the conversation and see where you can add. And then I looked at these lists while I was preparing for today's session, and it kind of gives you this kind of when you want to know what a journal presents, look at their most recent highly cited papers and try to see which areas you think you can add to the conversation. And it doesn't have to begin with a paper. As we're going to talk about later on, maybe it begins with joining a community and making sure you're talking to the right people. And as Constantin said, again, it's, editors are much more accessible than before. So in JCM, we try to look at the review process more as a gardening versus gatekeeping. Gatekeeping is important because of the quality of the journals and the, what we promise, our audience. I'm happily not part of this process, formally at least. I mean, indirectly, I do review papers, but we do a similar, appreciate the time of the submitting authors, and we do also like to not always go through all the layers. So only in the round 0 is where we, get the feedback of the AEs and the, hopefully 3 to 4 reviews that are very developmental. They give you good feedback of your paper, whether it's accepted or not. And then once you reach that stage and you have the revisions, or your papers in the revision phase in round 1, it stays within the editors-in-chief and the AEs, and even towards the end for the last stages, it just stays with the editors-in-chief. So this kind of again has that kind of fun where it stays the timeline of how your submission. I don't have the exact numbers on me, but it makes this process efficient and again developmental at the same time. I'll spend the coming few slides talking about what we're looking for in the journal, and we're going to categorize them into theory, methodology, and impact. So we'll begin with the theory part, where again, JSCM is big on theoretical contribution. We try to extend or test existing theories and develop new ones across multidisciplines like organizational, sociological, and political theory. The idea is that theory should not just be a garnish; it should be the dish itself. And this is something I think that's we all look to want to have, but we're very specific in how maybe the desk reject gets out. If you just look at and you just read through the paper that you're submitting, and we just see the role of theory, just the garnish. It's like kind of where we try to say this is not right for JSCM. We look for theoretical diversity. So again, if you are typically using grand theories, RBV, TCE, and just putting it out there, this is we receive a lot of those, but we're really looking for is the studies that have to do with organizational theories, sociological theories, philosophy, metaphors, and that has that level of subjectivity that you typically, I mean, objectivism is good, but we want to hear the narrative. We want to, understand more about the situations where the storylines come from, and look at the social, factors affecting a certain phenomena. So these are the kind of things that I think the journal is taking this direction very clearly in, if you're looking to join in the coming years. I like how, and again, this session is recorded. There's, at least in each one of these categories, theory, methodology, and practice, there's ample resources and readings if you plan to submit to the journal, or, again, or prepare yourself to submit or be part of this, community. You might want to take a look at these papers. So on theory, again, discourse analysis and its potential for theoretical advancement, reimagining supply chain challenges through critical engaged research, and discontinuous wefts, weaving a more interconnected supply chain tapestry are all very good reads if you're trying to navigate, again, what JSCM is looking for in terms of theoretical contribution. Moving on to methodology, typical to my colleagues here in the room, we're all looking for rigorous empirical methods. So yes, it is an empirical journal. With, game theory, optimization, OR papers are not part of what we look for. So these are, again, clear desk rejects. That said, we do accept quantitative and qualitative, research. I have this nice diagram from my colleagues in the editor-in-chief team. So no our models, but we are looking to, we receive a lot of hypothesis testing, regression model surveys, and again, we're open to those, but we would like to publish and see more in ethnography and interpretive analysis, sense-making, historic research, especially in the region. And this is a good opportunity for the audience in the room today. I think it was Constantin who said, exploit your local contexts. And there's this debate that we had, again, from John and from Fabrizio and Stephen about how do you actually navigate it with the kind of data access you have in the regions you I mean, it's a hard paradox, but proper training, developmental workshops, not getting it right the first time or the second time. Again, these are the kind of, cycles you have to go through until you get this right. If you're interested, again, in more detail on this, again, qualitative and quantitative research, a recent paper from, again, editorial team, Andreas, Wendy, and Ting, a guided tour through the qualitative research. And this is big for a journal like Journal Supply Chain Management. But again, they're very open now for quantitative ways of analysis, especially with AI and text mining. And again, there's a nice paper on using supply chain databases in academic research, a methodological critique. I think I also have one of those nice 3. So we have these, again, this is recorded. So editorial commentary from previous editors on addressing confusion in the diffusion of archival data research, testing the shoulders of giants, replication studies. There's a special issue going out for this one, especially these days, using supply chain databases in academic research. That's the one I just mentioned, Kalut and et al. So I guess, again, yes, we want to have it all, but we want to do it in a very developmental way. So theory, methodology, and most importantly, and this is a huge direction, I have to say, the 3 editors-in-chief are really focusing on with even one of those versions of, social impact direct papers that are, 3,000 to 5,000 words, where they can actually talk about the impact of the social impact of supply chain management. So we're definitely looking to create useful knowledge that could improve practice, policy, and socio-ecological systems. Topics related to climate, biodiversity, social responsibility, regeneration, circular economy, food chains. I think all journals are looking for top theory methodology in these that also have that impact. So yes, we're looking to have this all. Ecological crisis is definitely the elephant in the room. Every time, if you're attending international conferences, you can understand this by sitting in the room and having if you want to go to the room and see who's attending these sessions now, there are all the editorial boards of these journals going to find out what's the latest in these, and if you're in the academy, you find out. The thing with these kind of problems, and again, we can talk about it from a regional perspective later on in this meeting, the fact that if you, and again, I've seen you can supervise papers that can get supplier integration, operational performance, environmental uncertainty. I don't think that's gonna cut it out for the kind of journals that are here today. the world is filled with wicked problems, and the complexity of them and how you capture them doesn't have to be this complex. But again, this is where we're looking for. I think they spell it out by saying we research, we're not trying to fill the gap, right, anymore. I know you're trained in Africa here and in the MENA region to really, I mean, I was trained this way, you know, where's the gap, show the gap, and then you have to have it in your abstract, you have to have it very clearly. I don't think is the right way how moving forward. I think you really have to find the puzzle, tell a story, find a problem that might be interdisciplinary, and take a safe bet on what kind of supply chain theories or operation management theories would feed into them. And that's how you might begin to put your foot in this landscape. Again, if you're looking for more detail, maybe a paper from, again, Arash and Kevin, a typology of supply chain network resilience strategies, complex collaborations in a complex world, impact of supplier sustainability risk on shareholder value. And yeah, and Andreas has advancing the supply chain toward transformative supply chain management, again, as a recent one by Andreas. So it is that, and you can look from the special call, look at the special issues right in the call for special papers right now. You have transformative leap towards regenerative socio-ecological systems. The replication one I mentioned about, which is for the methodology component. Supply chain resilience theory for tomorrow's world. And resilience is a wider word for, you know, we use it in Africa, especially with sustainability, very alongside, and it's a very supply chain term, as you can imagine. So there's a lot of room to be stuff done there. Envisioning supply chains in a post-growth era, and emerging discourse incubator for complex adaptive supply networks in turbulent times. These are the ones out there. There is not one correct definition of theorizing. We must be open for a diversity of approaches, and I think they are. My colleagues sitting in the editorial office. Supply chains are in the thick of major crisis, for sure. I think it's a good time to be a supply chain professor in Africa, I have to say. We should solve them rather than reproduce them. Supply chain management is a social science, not a physical science. We need to grow beyond the naive positivism and surprise us with stories, history, you know, local theory that might add to the conversation. On the Africa side, and this is part of the North Africa MENA combination here, we've been a bit active with, you know, actually we partnered with JPSM in Ipsera, you know, in a German university in Cairo, online event in September. And we were physically present, me and my colleague Sam Fasawambo, in Cape Town in the Africa Academy of Management, which is a biannual conference. And again, our next one will be in 2026, January usually. My colleague visited Lagos Business School, and again, I visit here multiple business schools talking about JSCM as a lead journal, probably developmentally because it's a long way again for a lot of the you know, aspiring authors. And I've spoken actually to colleagues. I've had successful conversations with some associate professors in you know, in the region. We did a world tour under the responsible management education one with a lot of business and society, journal business ethics, research policy. But again, supply chain management should have a seat in this one, and I made sure that was there. We're having the, I'm flying to Kenya in a week to, again, you know, we have a diverse submission, Africa Academy of Management of papers. So I'm hoping that some papers that are supply chain can find their way to one of your journals. And Kariska is running in Ghana this year again, and I'm very heavily involved in the dissertation award, where you actually see the best work in Africa, and it's refreshing. A lot of them are still on the OR side because how the discipline is very caught in between how it used to be taught and how it's taught today, according to what the Academy of Management. So we can talk about that also. Please, if you are going to be there in Chicago, join us, me and my Africa regional editors, Ade, Sam, and myself. It's on Saturday. I hope you are there early enough to attend at 2 p.m. in the Sheraton of Columbus. And it's all about what I just talked about, understanding and building stronger supply chain research in Africa. So it's about research. It's not about, it's if you're a practitioner, of course, but definitely this is the, join us. It's sponsored by AFAM and OSCM right here. If you're looking to submit a manuscript, please contact Andreas Wieland. For any other questions about what I talked about today, you can contact me or my colleagues here from the editorial team. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sherwood. Thank you so much, everyone, for your presentations. And now we'll open the floor for questions from the audience. I think, Mohammed, the audience can open the microphone if they want to ask the question directly or just writing in the chat.
Actually, this works as a webinar, so it's easier to put it in the chat box, yeah, for Q&A, yeah. And now we have 4 questions, yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much. So, yeah, I can see the question in the Q&A. So, one of the questions is more about the theory and the importance of theory in the research paper. So, the question is like how to enrich our manuscript by incorporating theories. This is, I think, it's an open question for all editors for different journals. And then we have another question from Kumar as well, who's talking about the primary data importance in research. And he's looking at your opinion as experts on the specific subjects of research for the region. So one is about the theories and the importance of incorporating theories in research. And the other question is more about topics and subjects that you are recommending as editor for your journals.
Do you want us to answer in any specific order or just take a crack as we go?
Yeah, as you like. So no order. So if you'd like to answer the questions, so you can do that. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that research without theory is just kind of an accident. You know, I don't know. The question itself that you're asking, if you're going to submit to any of our journals, JPSM, of course, as well, there needs to be a contribution to the theory. That's the whole point of it, right? So you frame the question around the phenomenon that you want to study, and the mechanisms that you're trying to demonstrate would be posited by theory. So either you're falsifying something that's been done, or you're using theory to exemplify something new. Either way, it's not it's not something you can just add on after the fact. When you design the study and the question, the theory is the foundation of it all, and everything else builds from that. I mean, at least that's how I would frame the response to that question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Stephen.
So if you can add,
Yeah.
I would answer the answer that I give to my doctoral students actually is that if you don't have a theory that relates to your problem, probably you don't know the literature. There is always something that links what we are saying, and that is, let's say, the base for well, building an algorithm, but also to talk with the others. Because in the social sciences, theory is not like in the physical sciences. We don't really predict much. So theory is more something that we use to talk to each other, right? So that is something that is important, to relate what you're doing to what the other have been doing, and to see how you're adding your little grain of salt right to the conversation. In the past, I must say that JOM, but also other journals, we were confusing making a theoretical contribution to linking what we do to the grand theories in management. That's not the case. But I mean, you always have to think about, okay, beyond solving a problem, what I'm doing links to our journey towards building knowledge. That's about theory.
Thank you very much, Fabrizio. Constantin, would you like to comment on the theory question?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure. I tried to type in a couple of responses at the same time. I think for the theory question, I just read the one that Mohammed posted on what are the primary shortcomings typically found in papers submitted from MENA countries, and what recommendations do you have to address these issues? I think this is a super important one. And I think there are unfortunately, many things in my mind to respond to that question, if you allow me to go there. First, the desk reject rate is absurdly high. And I think that also, as mentioned before from Sherbert and others, it's about communication and being in touch with the field and trying to be exposed and going to conferences, talk to people. My sense is from the region, and it's also not dissimilar to Europe to a certain extent. And I see a lot of similarities there. And I think it goes back probably to the absence of structured PhD programs and other infrastructural underpinnings. I think people are so happy once they finish their paper that they almost submit the very first draft of the paper. I mean, not like the first draft of writing it, but you have to imagine if you're in an assistant professor program in the US or a PhD program, your paper might be torn apart 5, 6, 7 times because your supervisor tells you that is not good work. Sit down, focus again, find your punchline. What does your research actually mean? And I think from the region, but I would also, as mentioned in Europe, it's often that people think like, oh, now I finished 32 pages. It's all gold. I have to submit it. I'm super convinced. And unfortunately, that is not always the case. And I think it's also natural for most people to be not distant enough to one's own research. While talking to others, not necessarily US scholars, but other scholars from the region will help you quite a bit. And I feel that this distance of reevaluating the research that you did is not happening so much in the region, that submissions are done too early. Second thing I see, particularly from the region, is, and that sounds almost a bit like stigmatizing or whatever, but it's not intended this way. But it's just empirical learning over the years. I think I had never, with any other region, although we don't receive many submissions, but even proportionally talking, so many discussions forth and back with the author team that said, oh, but it is really good research. This is not a reject. You have to accept the paper. I think there's a different way of dialogue there. And I would say probably people are not yet open enough to be criticized and to criticize each other's work. So I think that is really one element that institutionally needs to evolve. And I think that's why this forum and other forums and Academy of Management Initiative and Cariska and is very important. And I think it's, of course, it's full MENA region. And I think the problem I mentioned is particularly in the Middle Eastern region. That's what I came across. So I think people have to open up and to discuss. Nobody is free of errors, that is clear. And no manuscript is the best manuscript in the world. So that's, I'm sure the others will have even more insightful feedback.
Yeah, thank you so much, Constantin. And also would be, if we can hear also like, if you would like to comment on the same question, Fabrizio and Stephen Sherwood, which is the question about shortcoming of the papers received from the region. If you would like to add to Constantin's comments.
I mean, we can combine the discussion. So there is that underrepresentation. It's in numbers. It's in why we're here today. It's in the past only, I say, couple of years, maybe coming back from COVID. A lot of people reaching out from all journals saying, maybe having some kind of emerging economy track and their their counter events at the academy. So there is that intention. And as again, Constantin said in the beginning, these are the good days to if you're sitting in a different place in the world with sitting in a different story. The bet is that, yes. So if we are surrounded in your your jobs, if you're again the people your students' bodies are, whether they're young professionals or mature academics moving into a PhD program, they are out there, they're in touch with the societal issues, the policy issues, the government issues, ecologically, whatever it is, right? But then the problem itself is not necessarily defined under supply chain management. And then you have our operations, OSCM. So basically, you have to begin with, if you're sitting there and trying to publish in these journals and you have that kind of guidance, you can try to begin, first of all, look for good data sets that exist and look at a problem that the data shows, and then try to match theory. And I like what Fabrizio said, that there's always a theory to explain. If it ends up being some kind of relevant theory that, and I'm not saying grand theories we typically use in, published in the handbook of journal supply chain, purchasing supply chain management, you can, you widen that, and that's what we're really looking for. But then you try to position them in these sense and ask again and find out where, if the phenomena you're seeing can be described within current theories. And then again, and that takes part of the problem. But the issue I think at hand is always this way, is that being in these regions, you always feel the pressure to solve the problem. And that's a good thing to have. But typically there is that paradox between theoretical contribution and being able to solve a practical problem. And that duality exists in every, decision you make. If you're trying to publish something practical, that might go into a policy piece maybe, or consult for a local firm, or if you're trying to publish something that fits into the audience of today. And you can wear the two hats, you can make a choice. But again, you want to be conscious of this, because it's not an easy thing to go through, where you want to solve today's problem and really change the world, as those enthusiastic students come and very excited for me to supervise them. And then I start saying, but that's not going to ever be published in these journals. So there is that issue, and we want to be open about it. And editorial teams need to know about this. But their rigor, theory, impact are going to be the best things you're going to look for always.
Thank you very much. I also have a question for all panelists, if you don't mind. So how do journals plan to incentivize researchers from the developing countries, particularly when we talk about MENA region, to contribute to articles to your journals? So what kind of activities are you planning to do in order to encourage also scholars to submit to the to different journals that we are having today? So what kind of programs do you have?
We've been doing a great deal of outreach around the world. In December, I was in India for about 2 weeks, spreading the word about the journal, doing these kind of things, explaining what we're looking for to get manuscripts submitted in. We're doing one over the summer in South Korea. And if anybody wants to have me at any of these universities, I'll get on a plane and do it. So basically, it's the sort of thing. I think these digital formats allow access, which is incredible. But I think being in hand, speaking with somebody, talking with them about their paper, and kind of collaboratively developing the idea is something that is much more valuable and impactful. So we have been curating these paper development workshops around the world. And I think, like everybody here, just, feel free to reach out and give us a holler. I usually hop on a Zoom with anybody that's looking to get their stuff in our journals, or if has questions about fit. And you might not like the candid feedback, but the feedback will be useful to you as you move forward. If it's not for me, it could be for another journal here. So yeah, I think that's what I would say with respect to that. Is just either give me a heads up and I can meet you somewhere, or let's get something going on Zoom. But definitely don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Fabrizio,
if I can add, I mean, surely I'm not Elliot and Rogelio, but I know that they like Stephen and Constantin and whatever, they surely travel around. There is another thing that we are doing. For example, in the department that I am leading, we are planning to publish some, let's say, boilerplate guidelines that, for example, help people understand how an IBR study should look like, right? And these are meant to lower barriers, because maybe it's more difficult in a developing country to convince some organization to do a field study. Maybe you can do an intervention. Then the question is how you position them. But moving beyond this, I think in the end of the day, one way we have them is to publish papers that are easy to read and methodologically transparent, because when you publish, you have to understand that science is also a social construction. So you have to understand what are the rules of the game, right? And so what we can do as publisher is to be open. If we get a submission from a developing country, we probably have a special eye of attention to that paper. But the other thing that we can do is try to be as transparent as possible and make paper a little pedagogic if you want, right? So that you can reverse engineer them more easily. But there's no magic stick here. I don't know, Constantin, share what would you think?
thank you very much.
Yeah, I can go next if you like. Of course, what many journals do is, of course, to invite people as reviewers from the region who can better tell what the context is about, because you often see, and I think many questions in this forum here are related to this. You otherwise might have somebody as a reviewer who does not understand how difficult it was to get the data and to appreciate the work that you've done, and would rather start with the wrong assumption of 100% is always achievable in any context from a rigor point of view. And that, I think, is very important role to play. I appreciate also that editorial boards and others do change, and I think I agree that change from the top is important, but I think I mentioned this also last time in Cariska conference. Even more important is to have some stellar cases and to celebrate them, where people from the region published in those journals and talk to others how the experience was, what did work out, have people been happy in supporting me. Of course, it's still a lottery. You don't know who the reviewers will be, but these championing of some studies, I think, is important, and to follow and to also to create from your side a bit more coherent grouping that is present at Academy of Management and others. That will help a lot. Yeah, I think from our side, it's picking people that have experience. The second thing, but it's still also not yet published, but we're still working on it, is going forward and back. We have one special paper on empirical standards for research from emerging markets, but we're still debating about the final recommendation is going forward and back, and it's on my desk. So I'm waiting for it. It's almost there. Will be published, but I think that is very important, because I said before, if you come with a view that, I mean, I understand your point, Fabrizio, on survey research, but if you come with a view or the misperception that was created probably by Mikko's initiative that survey is not a good thing, and then a reviewer who does not know the context would just judge per se and would not understand that this might be a very good matter to collect data in Uganda or in Jordan. And I must say, I rather take some research from the region that has some limitations and is not perfect, but at least I understand something new. And I think that's where we as journalists, editors have to push, because if we have only data from the US and potentially in the next time from China, it will not explain the whole story. And it's also getting a bit boring. So I would say that also the discrimination that we had seen probably 20 years back, where people always said, oh, I don't want to see research from in India, in China, whatever, and people look down on it. I think we're at a different stage. However, the role of theory is super, super important. So either you contribute or test theory. If that is not there, it's absolutely right to say, what does the description of the situation in Jordan, in Syria, add to the discussion? If there's no theoretical punch point, then it could be just a description. And I understand then the editors who say, oh, that's only a regional thing. It's just a description. So you have to test or develop theory. And I think everybody will welcome you with open arms. But the theory point is decisive.
Thank you very much.
That one, just on that one also, is that the cross-region, I mean, the regions we're talking about now are very diverse, and we need to, I mean, I'm focusing on Africa, but definitely I want to do more in the Middle East, and sitting where I am, you know how we have that duality also. The specificities of operation, I mean, we're lucky because our discipline does differ by region. I mean, you look at it, how the operations run, how the supply chains run, Africa, you know, Continental Free Trade Agreement, these are all things happening in the region, again, at a very extensive level, and research, there are specificities there that if you can spell it out and you can actually link it to some kind of theoretical contribution, I think you, and speak to one of the authors and then get it wrong the first time and then right the other times, I think there's something there to be done. And developmental, I think we have to be patient, all of us. Nothing with the kind of caliber, I mean, this is a very nice to have, you know, group of people to speak to. But if you're in the room and you're still beginning your research, and you are again in one of the MENA region institutions, try to always ask your supervisor to, maybe when you go to an international conference, to network there with everyone else. If you're the one traveling on behalf of your university, go and meet the people in OSCM. If you're coming to the academy, that's another piece to do. The diaspora, I have to say, adding to Constantin, is you mentioned, finding these small people happening. A lot of them are young MENA or African scholars traveling to the West. And yes, you want to get them at the right time of their careers and listen carefully where they still have that connection to their countries and they still have the aspiration to work, you know, in kind of the job market that you guys have. So these are kind of, again, directions that we might all do, but it's going to take time. And the good thing along the journey, if we do all the developmental process, whether training reviewers, training, again, authors, faculty, focusing on impact, I think we'll get it right at a point of time.
Thank you very much. So there's a question from also in the chat about if you are thinking of like having a special issue related to developing countries, including the MENA region. So is this something in your plan as journals to have some special issues for the region, developing countries in general and the MENA in particular?
At IJOM, we have a democratic process like most journals. So there is a call for special issues. They are normally not mandated by the editor-in-chief. So my recommendation, if someone in the audience is interested, partner maybe to create the right mix of guest editors and submit the proposal. That's we don't do top-down thing. I don't know the others.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, we're pretty filled on special issues for the next 12 to 18 months, but much like Fabrizio said, if there's some kind of an interest, we would ask, you know, to reach out to Carmela and myself, and it would need to be justified as to what the value and how it would fit within the aims and scope of the journal. But for the foreseeable future, we don't have plans.
Thank you very much. I think we are almost like reaching the end of the webinar. So I think this is really very insightful conversation. There's many questions. I think people are very interested in there's many questions in the chat, and it was very insightful, and it's really good to learn more about the 4 journals and also getting some tips about publishing and submitting papers, about networking, about like building this community and interacting with the scholars in the area, including editors and different reviewers in the OSCM division. And also would like that our team as ambassador we will also organize a webinar in the coming months that will focus on the social part of operations and supply chain management in the region, in the MENA region, including practitioners and researchers who's working on social operations and supply chain management. So thank you so much. Thank you for the esteemed editors. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Constantin, Fabrizio, Sherwood, and Stephen. It was really a great pleasure to have you with us, and I'm sure that we might need also more sessions of this kind in order to open the conversation with everyone in the region. So thank you very much for your time, and thanks for all audience who joined us today. And this session is recorded, and we will share it also with colleagues in the area, in particular in our institutions, so we can also spread the benefits with everyone. Thank you so much, and thanks for the ambassador team as well for being here.
Thank you, Rima. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you and goodbye.
Um,